Most people scroll past the Honda CB100 because they think a 100cc bike can't possibly be interesting in 2026. But honestly, what surprised me is how this tiny machine might be exactly what modern riders actually need. I kept comparing it in my head to bigger bikes everyone dreams about, and I noticed something funny. Most owners of large bikes spend more time stuck in traffic than enjoying open highways anyway. The first thing that stood out to me is how Honda seems to be refining simplicity instead of chasing flashy features. The 2026 CB100 feels like a bike built for daily life, not weekend bragging rights. One big misconception is that small displacement bikes are only for beginners. I used to think that too, until I started appreciating how stress-free lightweight motorcycles actually are in crowded cities. A practical takeaway here? A lighter bike saves fuel, reduces maintenance costs, and removes the anxiety of handling something heavy in tight parking spaces. And here's another thing most people miss. The CB100's design looks cleaner and slightly sharper now, almost like Honda wants entry-level riders to feel proud of their bikes again. I compared it to older commuter bikes that looked dull and purely functional. The 2026 version feels like Honda finally realized commuters also want style, not just practicality. The mistake many buyers make is jumping straight to bigger engines thinking they'll grow into them, but in reality, they grow tired of heavy clutch pulls and heat in traffic. A smarter approach? Start with something manageable. Build skills and enjoy riding every day instead of wrestling with your motorcycle. What really caught my attention is how smooth Honda engines usually feel, even in smaller bikes. I've ridden enough commuters to know that vibration ruins daily rides more than lack of speed. If Honda keeps the refinement strong in the CB100, that alone makes it a winner for urban riders. Comfort matters more than top speed when your commute is 40 minutes of stop-and-go chaos. Another misconception is that small bikes are boring because they're slow. But honestly, I've had more fun pushing small bikes to their limits than cruising big bikes slowly. When you can twist the throttle fully without fear, every ride becomes engaging. On big bikes, you're often holding back just to stay within legal speeds. A practical takeaway here is simple. Fun doesn't come from horsepower numbers, it comes from how much you can actually use the bike's performance. Something else I noticed is how fuel efficiency keeps becoming more important. With rising fuel costs, a bike like the CB100 suddenly looks smarter than oversized machines. Imagine commuting daily and barely thinking about fuel expenses. That peace of mind adds up over months, more than people expect. Another common mistake riders make is underestimating maintenance costs. Smaller engines usually mean cheaper servicing, parts, and insurance, which matters for students and young professionals. If the 2026 CB100 keeps Honda's reliability reputation, owners might ride it for years without drama. And honestly, reliability becomes sexy once you've dealt with unexpected breakdowns. One interesting shift I'm seeing is more riders choosing practical bikes after experiencing expensive ownership. People eventually realize riding stress-free beats showing off. The CB100 also seems perfect for learning road awareness and control skills. On smaller bikes, you focus more on traffic flow and positioning instead of just relying on brute force. A good takeaway for new riders is to master riding basics first. Confidence built on smaller bikes carries over when you eventually move up. I also keep thinking about how cities are becoming more congested worldwide. Compact motorcycles like the CB100 suddenly feel future-proof rather than outdated. And here's a question worth asking. Do we really need massive engines for daily commuting, or have we just been sold that dream for years? Another overlooked advantage is maneuverability. When you can easily slip through traffic or park anywhere, riding feels less like work and more like freedom. The mistake people often make is buying bikes based on ego instead of lifestyle. Then they end up frustrated when practicality hits reality. A smart takeaway here is matching your motorcycle to how you actually ride, not how you imagine riding someday. What I personally appreciate is how approachable bikes like the CB100 are for new riders, shorter riders, and anyone intimidated by heavy machines. Motorcycling should feel welcoming, not intimidating. And honestly, sometimes going smaller actually brings back the joy of riding. Less stress, less cost, and more spontaneity. If Honda prices the 2026 CB100 competitively, it could quietly become one of the smartest buys in urban motorcycling. Not flashy, but incredibly sensible. So, when people ask me if bikes like this still matter in 2026, I pause for a second. Because the more the world changes, the more simple, efficient motorcycles start making perfect sense. And personally, I think the Honda CB100 might remind many riders that motorcycling was never about size or speed, it was always about freedom in the simplest form.